Hello, welcome to this special report. We have just walked all the way from Marble Arch down past Hyde Park, down Park Lane, all the way to Victoria. It's the end of the big pro-Palestine protest. We wanted to come here to try and find out, spend some time with the protesters and try to find out what they were really like, because by some accounts there's a bunch of dangerous, anti-British, pro-terrorist activists who should be banished. And by other accounts, they're cuddly, nice, pro-peaceful demonstrators who should be allowed to say their piece. And I think we had quite a mixed experience. What would you say, Flo?
We did. I've been down at the protests in the last few weeks, and I must say this one had a slightly different tone. Instantly arriving, there was obviously far more people, and that means far more kind of factions and extreme versions of factions. There were a lot of young men, I noticed here, more than there'd ever been before. Maybe just men looking for trouble, but there didn't actually seem to be that much trouble. Lots of them were so young. In fact, we spoke to 16, 17-year-olds.
Some of them masked. That was generally a bit of a sign that if the young guys had masks on, they were a little bit more edgy, maybe didn't want to come too close.
Yeah, and they didn't want to be filmed. Most of them, they didn't want their faces on camera, and that felt like perhaps that was because they wanted to start trouble, and that life would be easier for them if no one could see who they were.
And yeah, among the kind of young kid brigade, there was some quite eloquent, quite sweet school kids.
Oh, there certainly were. I mean, there were also lots of school kids who were very well versed in the history of Palestine. I spoke to one who was maybe 12 years old, who could really explain to me the entire 75-year history of this conflict.
Right. Hi.
Hello, you're right.
So I see you put your face mask on. Why have you done that?
Just to hide my identity.
Why do you want to hide your identity?
That's a bit of a personal question, sir.
Okay, so why are you here?
Come to obviously protest for the innocent kids and the innocent parents and people that are getting bombed. This is not a war. This is genocide.
Who do you blame?
Israel.
What about the UK, America? Do you feel angry about them as well?
I blame Israel, completely Israel. I don't like Israel. I hate Israel.
Would you talk to me about why you're here today?
I'm here to express my solidarity with Palestinians who have been suffering under 75 years of illegal occupation and 16 years of siege. I'm here to tell them that we're with them. Despite our leaders being silent, we will do whatever we can to make sure you're safe and you're free.
How will you do that, apart from getting out in the streets?
We'll continue to raise awareness and debunk myths that are being spread online.
What are the myths?
There's a lot of myths, for example, that 40 babies were beheaded by Hamas. This was proven to be fake. But even Joe Biden himself retracted this.
Why do you think people are spreading that information?
I think it's all part of Israeli propaganda to hide the truth.
Do you protest about other kind of causes and conflicts around the world, or is there something about this one that you feel particularly strongly about?
No, I've been to the Black Lives Matter protest before. Not many others. I'm 16 now, so...
There were these other groups which had been bussed in, so you could see they were a bit like the old mining banners. There were these County Durham pro-Palestine, it was Hull mosques in favour of Palestine. A lot of them appeared to be affiliated to mosques, and they came in these groups. Those were mainly men. I would say they were more quiet, less eloquent. Obviously,
large beards, scarves. They were praying in the streets. There were hundreds of people we saw walking through Park Lane, praying on the floor, on the ground, on their coats, and that was quite stark to see. That.
For you, is it a religious thing, or is it what?
Humanity thing. It's not just about religion. It's a humanity thing. Any religion, they can't be innocently killed. That's the top and bottom of it.
Yeah. Why don't you do that? It had a very religious feeling. Like, even though a lot of the placards were just generic ideas about peace and occupation, this was a very Muslim occasion, and you really felt like it was the part of these mixed identities that immigrant communities obviously have. It was the Muslim part was what was calling them here today.
Yes, and if you did have a concern on the other side that this issue was going to become a wedge issue that would cause civil strife in Britain, the vast majority of people were there for quite clear and honest religious reasons. and no one was trying
What
to
is that honest religious reason? I mean, it's the brotherhood in Islam is what we're talking about.
Could I talk to you about your sign?
Yeah, of course you can.
So can you tell me why this is not a religious battle and why actually there is a bigger
There's
question?
Christians and there's rabbis and there's Arabs living in Palestine, so it's about everybody.
You don't think, looking at the crowd today, that there is a religious element to what we're seeing today?
No, it's quite mixed.
So the story doesn't start on the 7th of October as the mainstream media in the world, especially in the West, want to show us.
So what do you want to happen? What do you want to? What's your solution to this problem?
The solution of colonization and spoliation of the land is liberating Palestine.
What does that look like?
Look to liberate all the Palestine, and there is no Zionist country. The Zionist Israel is a Zionist country. It's fabricated. You know, I sent you to read the intellectual linguistic famous in the world Noam Chomsky, the American Jewish, you know, who wrote this, and all academic historian in the world. Oxford,
So where?
Harvard, and the South Africa. You know,
So where do the Israelis go?
this is about the history. There is unanimity in the world, in academic circle. They can't win this battle of the history. Palestine for the Palestinian. That's it.
So where do the Israelis go?
Who is Israeli?
Where should the Israelis go?
Doesn't exist before 48.
Where do you want to send them?
Sorry, doesn't exist for 48.
No.
Jewish people on the world. Ask the Jewish population. The Jewish by the Torah, by the Old Testament, they have to live everywhere. There is no state. And by the way,
But they should not be allowed their own country.
say by the way, there is Jewish who live in Palestine before 48, which represent 5 or 10% of the population, and Christian represent more than 20% Palestinian. Palestine is not a religious country. This is not a religious problem. Judaism is a religion. This is a big manipulation for weak spirit and manipulation of the mass. UK historically, the UK and the deep state in the world, America and UK will start. They have common interest with Zionist country to divide Arabic world and to dominate petrol and gas, and even worse than that. Now we know that Christian new evangelist Christian with extremist Jewish like Netanyahu, they believe to apocalyptic vision, which is they have to destroy the Mosque Al-Aqsa in Al-Quds and accelerate the coming don't interrupt, and accelerate the coming of the Messiah for Armageddon.
If Nelson Mandela, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, if all of these resistance, if all of these freedom fighters stand with Palestine and all the colonialist countries stand with Israel, that should tell you something.
This protest has brought back memories of the Iraq protest after 9/11, and yet there is a completely different atmosphere here. Seeing people praying in the streets everywhere you go across central London gives it a really religious element. And many people we've spoken to have said that no, this is not a holy war, this is not about religious schisms, and yet it does feel that there is a serious religious element to this day.
So I guess if your concern is about mass immigration, if your concern is that multiculturalism isn't working, that whole basket of questions, yeah, this was a bit of a concerning event in that clearly that identity is still very, very strong, and those people felt that they shared more in common than with, you know, other groups in London or elsewhere.
Well, and also they felt very angry with the government. So there was also this split, which was many of the placards were saying, you know, screw Suella Braverman, fuck Keir Starmer. It was very directed at the people in charge, who they see as letting down the people of Gaza and in some way aligning themselves with the destiny of Israel as opposed to the rights of Muslims. And so you could see very quickly how, should it turn violent, things could go in a very particular direction.
The Suella Braverman line that it's a hate march and that anyone who is chanting from the river to the sea is in favor of genocide, you know, everyone was chanting that. So if you believe that chant means you're pro-genocide, then most of these people are pro-genocide. However, when you ask people what they actually meant by it, usually they didn't actually mean that. And what does from the river to the sea mean to you?
For me, basically, we just want them from the land, from the sea, everywhere. There need to be no occupation.
No oppression, no occupation.
So where will the Israelis go?
Well, what you got to understand is, Israel's, who was put them there? Palestine gave them space, but it doesn't mean to occupy it. If the Germans are feeling sad, then why don't they give them space there? Why don't Britain give them space?
Do you think they should leave Palestine and move to Germany?
If they're only going to kill innocent civilians and put them in jails and whatever, then yeah.
It means freedom from oppression and freedom from, they're not being given their rights. They're killing innocent women, children.
Israel is a terrorist state. You can clearly see from these protests. And what we want to do is we want to not only boycott all the other companies that are involved in the funding of the IDF and the Israel government, but we want the UK government to actually realise that they've got blood on their hands, and them funding the government is actually causing all of this genocide for years and years now.
So what's your account of what happened on October the 7th then? Israel had left the Gaza Strip. They were not attacking the Gazans at that point. Were there 1,400 people? How do you explain?
Well, I would say, first of all, I wasn't there. So no one really knows what happened. There are certain accounts coming from, frankly, the IDF. And there are accounts that are coming from, like the Haaretz, for example.
So you don't believe the...
Oh, I don't know. No, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying what I believe or don't believe. I'm saying I don't know what happened on October the 7th. If people were killed, innocent people were killed, then of course that's wrong. Of course that's wrong. But I'm saying actually
innocent people were killed.
Sorry?
I think most people understand that.
I'm saying is if it's proven innocent people were killed, that's fine. But I don't think to date there's unequivocal evidence that is actually true.
So you think it's all elaborate fake and all that 1,400 people?
I'm saying surely you need time to investigate that. Surely. I mean, where are the death certificates? Have you seen them? I haven't seen them.
Right to resist is written, right for self-defense is written within the Geneva Convention. And it doesn't...
Israel self-defense?
Israel doesn't get... the oppressor can't call for self-defense. And self-defense is not completely going on the offensive and committing carpet bombings on Gaza, on hospitals, on children's hospitals, on schools, on houses, on UN safety, on refugee camps. That's not self-defense.
Some of the critics of this protest would say that the people out on the streets today are supporting Hamas. What do you say to that?
I don't think that's true at all. I think, as you can see from all of the placards and everyone you speak to, we're marching for a ceasefire and we're marching for the human rights of Palestinian people. I think the mainstream media has really failed the people of Gaza, and they've portrayed this whole thing to be supporting Hamas, which is absolutely not true.
There were some white people there, apart from us. I would say 5%, something like that?
Yeah, maybe 5-10%. Many of them older leftists, you could tell.
Yeah, they were the kind of posh lefty brigade.
Yeah, of the academic variety, for whom Palestine has been a raison d'etre for many, many years.
Often identifiable from the rainbow peace flags. There are a few of those, and I inquired whether they were in some way the gay pride flag. Apparently not, it's a peace flag, but one woman told me that she'd used it for protests for years. It comes out the attic every time that the Palestinian question comes up.
It's a peace flag. I think the gay pride's the other way up, apparently.
Yeah. Oh, is it? It's a different rainbow.
Rainbow, as in Rainbow Warrior.
Have you used it before? Is it new for this protest?
Yeah, we've used it for many years. Often for Palestine.
This fighting will only exacerbate the tensions, the problems.
Is this the Socialist Workers' Party?
This is the Socialist Workers' Party.
So what has the Socialist Workers' Party got to do with Palestine and Gaza?
We want the liberation across the world, which I think means the socialist world, but it'll come from below. So the Palestine movement, for freedom for Palestine, is something that every socialist should be vitally interested in, because it challenges the power of our rulers. To challenge the power of the rulers is to help ordinary people find a better world.
Are you also standing in solidarity with people in kibbutzes in Israel who were so violently attacked a few weeks ago?
No, because that's not the right question to be asking. It didn't start on the 7th of October. You have to think that the Zionist entity, Israel, was a massive act of violence against the native Palestinians who were expelled in their hundreds of thousands. So we have to start from that and understand that a response to that is understandable. I don't like...
Including violence, including attacking civilians?
The thing is, the civilians of Palestine, the native population, have been violently attacked for over 50 years. That's where we have to start from. You have to understand that is the key question. If you got rid of the violence of the Israeli state, then you wouldn't have any violence at all.
So is any amount of violence too much in terms of Palestinians trying to liberate themselves?
The violence from the oppressed is different than the violence of the oppressor. The Israeli state machine is a massive war machine funded to the hilt by the US. You have to ask the question of the US. If the US violence didn't exist, as it did in Iraq and so on and so forth, then we have a very different kind of world.
So, I just think it's really important that people stop like warring on people, warring on other people. I'm just like anti-war.
You're completely anti-war across the board?
Yeah.
Do you think that most of the people here, most of the contingent of this protest are generally anti-war, or is it more specific?
I've no idea. I mean, obviously the situation in Gaza has been really problematic for a long time, and I just basically just feel that like we're kind of over here not really understanding exactly what's going on. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. I think there's a lot of seemingly opinion that it's okay for Israel to do what they want to do. That seems to be across the sort of like the northern world. And, so I don't think that's right. So I'm just here to...
I've heard from people within the art world that there's a big split between those who are curators and gallery owners versus the artists themselves on this issue. Have you found that the artists tend to swing more left-wing on this and that the people at the top tend to swing more right?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I have friends who are struggling to get commissions.
I don't really know. I think there is a lot of Jewish power in the art world, in the collector world high up, that probably is putting some pressure on the situation.
What do you mean by your sign?
I mean exactly what I mean by the sign, yes.
Are you talking about the Hamas attack on Israel or Israel's
give me a break.
response to Hamas?
Give me a fucking break. Are you serious? Is this really how you're going to try to frame this?
That's how I'm asking the question.
It's 10,000 plus people killed in the last month by Israeli forces. Half of them women and children. That is disgusting. Completely disgusting. You know what? Hamas is terrible. Hamas is awful. Israel takes the blame in this. This is a massacre.
There were many young people. That was the other thing that was quite amazing to see. Young Muslim girls in particular, teenage girls, some of whom had quite extraordinary signs that they refused to explain when we asked them to talk on camera about. But when we looked at them, I mean, it really was a stark group who were very distinctive of these young Muslim women holding signs with really quite extreme slogans on them, which we can show.
Yeah, this was, putting Israel in the trash can. It was the Ummah. It was, you won't win a fight with people who know that death is only the beginning. These are quite religious placards from these very heavily made up, kind of quite smart looking, clearly, upwardly mobile, I guess, London women. But then when you come and ask them to explain it, they just didn't want to talk. In fact, it was hard to get women to talk at this rally.
Very hard to get women to talk. I mean, there were also, on the other side of that spectrum, lots of middle-aged women, fully burqa'd, being led by the hand by their husbands, silently, which was quite stark. It's not something you see very often in London, actually, so perhaps they come from elsewhere. The young women, though, what was interesting maybe even more than the signs was the fact that I think it's maybe trite or cliche to say, but young women do tend to enter into extremist version of political questions more quickly. You know that's true just from...
Is that true of you, Flo?
That's always true of me, of course, in every given situation. But, we know that women tend more towards the extreme elements of political movements. And so actually the most extreme slogans we saw in this parade of people came from these young Muslim women. Would you tell me why you're here? We're just filming for a documentary. Okay, no problem. Can you... See, they do the placards, but they don't want to talk about it.
Let's have a word about the Tommy Robinson Brigade, the, how do we call them? The EDL types. We didn't see very many, but they were in attendance. There was one strange kind of I guess, 20-odd police officer gathering that seemed to be wrestling with about 3 old blokes wearing poppies who had been to the pub that didn't seem very sinister. And then there was, just here down the road, something which was a little bit more frightening, where there was a guy walking around who was clearly, he was looking for trouble. He was shouting Paki, he was shouting go home, go back to Palestine, into groups, and he was... Tell us what you experienced there.
Well, I could tell he was obviously looking for trouble, because he was approaching people and trying to say the most inflammatory thing to them while they were innocently standing on the side of the road. As soon as he was engaged, though, with them, he seemed to immediately back off. So it felt a little like it was just a kind of post-football match hooliganism.
We sort of almost got caught up in it, then tried to rapidly reverse out of it before it became too much of a scene, because you just see how quickly those things flare up. Yeah. Where you have a very angry person, you have people on the other side, and very quickly it can get out of hand.
People descended very quickly, and you could see that there was a potential. Lots of those masked men we spoke about earlier suddenly were around us. And of course, you know, why would you completely conceal your identity if not for a time like that?
So here at the edge of the protest, there's a bit of a scuffle going on. A lot of policemen, a couple of blokes wearing poppies, which you would think is pretty normal on the 11th of November, but here in this protest kind of marks them out as not with the current. What's all this about?
No, I'm just fed up with this.
Can I hear what you want to say?
That's all it is. I'm really fed up. No, I don't do military. Look at them all, look. Look at what?
Look at what? Look at what? Look at what? Look at what?
This guy's been threatening and told me to leave. Otherwise I'm going to get what? This one's got a mask on.
He came up to me and he said, go back to... So then why are you here? Go back to Palestine. Firstly, I can't get into Palestine.
You're not from Palestine.
Secondly, I'm not from Palestine. And two, if we all left and went to Palestine, what would happen to this economy? We come here in peace.
Have you seen many people like that today, though?
First person I've seen, to be honest, and I only got riled up because he went in my mum's face.
So we've tried to give a fair, honest version of what this huge pro-Palestine march here in London was actually like. If you're anxious about it and feel that in some way it shows the failure of multiculturalism, it shows there's a fifth column in our midst that don't support our values, frankly, there was evidence of some of that. It was a strongly religious Muslim gathering. Everyone was chanting from the river to the sea, and although some people gave much more vanilla explanations for what that meant, when you spoke to some people, they really did mean the destruction of Israel. So you can't leave this occasion and feel that there's nothing to that. But on the other hand, there were an awful lot of quite nice, normal people who were just out to show some kind of solidarity. I mean, where do you conclude on this? Where have you ended up?
I think the fact that many people we spoke to asked us what media outlet we were from and were incredibly skeptical, cynical about the mainstream media says a lot. I think that this protest and being in it really does show that there is a misrepresentation of the majority of people in this group by the mainstream media. And actually, when you listen to them and you speak to them, most are reasonable, most are sympathetic to the plight of Israelis and Palestinians, and yet for them this is something that deserves so much attention that they have to get to the streets. I think for anyone who feels radicalized on the opposite side to this, one of the best things you can probably do is to just walk through the protest, speak to people, and you might come out the other side with a much more nuanced and much less hysterical version of events.
Well, you can see Flo is very much on side with the protesters there. I guess I'm slightly more anxious about the whole occasion, but we don't always agree about everything, and that's the whole spirit here at UnHerd. Thank you for tuning in, and see you very soon.